Okay. Well, this is Pablo Moreno speaking. Can you hear me? Can you see the screen? Everything is okay? Everything looks fine? Good. Thank you, Milan. Yes, this is Pablo Moreno speaking here. I am running all the communities for PyCaret. I'm working closely with Moer and the rest of the core team for the development of PyCaret. We are glad to announce that this is actually the very first meetup of PyCaret that we do here within the PyCaret users. We're going to cover everything that is new in PyCaret version 2.3.6 with these new exciting features and functions that the core team has developed for the community completely for free. Let me just introduce you the new website for PyCaret, where you can dig into the details of what is PyCaret, how PyCaret works, what to do with it. You have a bunch of tutorials. You can start literally from scratch, from zero, even if you don't have a lot of information about coding, software development, or machine learning itself. You can start from zero. If you go into this section on the top, if you go on the docs, you are going to see the brand new overhauled documentation site. Everything is here. You can start, as I said, you can start literally from zero, even if you don't know anything about Python. You can go through every single of the modules in machine learning where PyCaret has been working on, including the please mute yourself if you're joining, so we can continue. On a second. Including the time series module. You also have options to join us through the different channels that we have, like, for example, Slack. You can join us on the Slack here. We have a Slack site like this, where you can ask all your questions, ask random questions. If you have any issue, we post ideas, updates. We usually make all the announcements here on the Slack channels completely for free. So you have a free support on PyCaret as well here on the chat. We also have the official site of the PyCaret user group, where we are going to start sharing a lot of content, a lot of meetups. We're going to share experiences. We're going to share business cases where the community is developing solutions for the multiple different scenarios where PyCaret can be used to solve all those business issues. And finally, even more important perhaps, I don't know, if you're interested to know what is the future roadmap of PyCaret, where is PyCaret going, take a look to our GitHub, GitHub/PyCaret. Okay, and you can find the roadmap of PyCaret, what's coming, what's next in PyCaret, and you can see all the many different integration modules in the future, including Spark. So this is going to be really exciting. We are going to integrate natively a time series module into the full PyCaret package, and also all the many other setups and functionalities that needs to be added and are going to be developed into PyCaret. So that's it. Let's start focusing on the session today, where Moez, the creator of PyCaret, is going to showcase the main functionalities that we have in the current version, the latest version of PyCaret 2.3.6, and we will discuss about some particularities of this new great and exciting update. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Moez, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, let's go for it.
All right, you can see my screen?
Yes, Moez.
Okay. All right, good morning and welcome everyone. Oops. Yeah, good morning, welcome everyone. I'll keep it very casual. I'll keep it light. The goal is to kind of just update you on the project. I'll show around. I have a very small demo of new functionalities that were added in 2.3.6. But I do have a little bit to talk about, how far the project has come, where is it going, and what is our roadmap for the next big release of 3.0. Yeah, so this is what I'm gonna talk about today: project updates, new features, and then there will be a demo, and we can wrap it up with the Q&A. Okay, I don't need to talk about myself. So what you're looking at in front of you is like a very high level machine learning lifecycle, right? Which starts with the business problem, data sourcing, ETL, and then the rest four boxes is mostly like comes under the ambit of data scientist. And where PyCaret is going, we start with like focusing on data preparation and model training and selection. So these were like, if you go back to 1.0, these were the two things that we were doing really well then. But today with 2.3.6, our focus has increased to all these four boxes here, right? We have a lot of deployment and MLOps functionalities coming up, okay? And you would see that 2.3.6 had a lot of MLOps functionalities. And also we are now supporting automated EDA. So our focus going forward would remain under these four areas. We will never, it's unlikely we can do anything for business problem, which is, very case specific. And data sourcing and ETL is not our vision or not part of our project charter. So in terms of updates, we have a new, then the next release would be, a minor release 2.3.7, which would include, a couple of bug fix and some minor updates and nothing major. But what we are actively working on, and our eye is on PyCaret 3.0. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But this would be, I'm looking forward for this release for some time now. And there are some major changes in PyCaret 3.0. We have a new website. Pablo has already shown it. So up until now, the problem was there is a lot of PyCaret content on internet, but it was all over the place. Website had old documentation. Then we had Read the Docs, which hosted API documentation. Then we had Medium blogs going on. There were blogs on my website. There was blogs on PyCaret website, and it was all over the place. So what we did, and I've been working on this for last 1 or 2 months, is I have cleaned everything up. Now, if you go to pycaret.org, you will not see any documentation there. The website is not supposed to, in the first place, host the documentation. Our official documentation and everything is moved to this link, pycaret.gitbook.io. And this is like one source of truth for PyCaret, whether it's video content, whether it's, blogs, user guide, tutorials, examples, cheat sheets, whatever you can think of, everything would be hosted here. Everything would be hosted here, right, going forward. And if you even go on the website and click on Get Started link, it will take you here. So pycaret.gitbook.io is the single source that will help you if you were to learn. So frequently asked questions are also there, right? All the community links are also there. And this meetup group is new. We will try to do at least like one meetup in a month. Pablo has been, helping me with, he's a community manager, and he's helping to set up all these things that an open source project should have with such a large community like PyCaret, right? Pablo is also helping a lot in the new documentation. He's doing the labor work alongside with me. So thank you, Pablo. New website, new documentation. And, I just encourage you to go to this link, pycaret.gitbook.io. Left-hand side, you will see a menu, and there's a lot of documentation. So you can export this as a PDF, and this would be like a 1,000-page book for you. Okay, so I've written it, in a manner that this can be used as a teaching material. Okay. All right, some cool metrics. We have recently hit 2 million download mark, I think a month ago or so. And we have reached 5,000 stars on GitHub, which is a very big achievement. The number that I'm most proud of is 65. It looks very small, given that now our minds are tuned to millions of views on TikTok and millions of views on YouTube. 65 looks a very small number, but trust me, it is extremely hard to get 65 people around the world contributing to code. So I'm really proud and thankful to all the contributors. This is the list of core team on our documentation website. I don't get a lot of opportunity to say thank you to them, but today, I mean, if you're using PyCaret and it is benefiting you, these are the people behind the scene who are keeping the lights open for you. So in terms of 3.0 roadmap, there are, there will be a lot of small things, but there are four major things happening. One is object-oriented API. So up until now, when you use PyCaret, you like import everything through star, or even if you import at a function level, you might have noticed, it uses global variables behind the scene. There's no such thing as class, right? That is going to change. Okay, a vast majority of our users are still, going to be using functional API. But what we are doing with 3.0 is we'll give you, a parallel object-oriented API. So instead of you doing from PyCaret.classification import setup now and then running setup, you would do from PyCaret.classification import experiment, and then you will initialize the experiment as a class, and then you would call your methods of that experiment object, right? This will not replace functional API, but this will just be a parallel API for users who want to use OOP style for PyCaret, right? One benefit of object-oriented API is up until now, if you're running an experiment in a notebook, because we use global variables to set configurations, you can only have run one experiment at a time in one notebook, right? Because you can't attach it to an object. With object-oriented API, you can run unlimited experiments in the same notebook, because instead of hitting global variables, it would hit class variables, right? So that would be possible. We are rewriting our entire pre-processing pipeline to make it compatible with the latest version of scikit-learn. And also, our vision is to, up until now with this version, we are using a lot of custom classes and a lot of custom things in the pipeline. And we have decided to, get rid of few functionalities that we wrote is not very common. Not a lot of people use them. But the problem was those few one or two features were stopping us from becoming 100% compatible with scikit-learn. Where we want to go is we want you to use PyCaret, train your pipelines, and then you shouldn't install PyCaret at runtime. When you are, in your production, when you're writing inference scripts, you shouldn't depend on PyCaret. PyCaret, is kind of pretty heavy. It has a lot of bells and whistles. You check out the model from PyCaret, and at your runtime, you just use, scikit-learn or XGBoost or CatBoost, whatever you're using, right? This pre-processing rewrite will allow us to do that. It would allow us to remove the dependency of PyCaret at runtime so that your applications can be, as lightweight as possible. Okay. The third major thing is, if you have used PyCaret, compare models is a really good function. It works really well. But if you're dealing with 300 million records, compare models is going to take forever, right? So what we are doing, there's a project called Fugue. It's a very nice project, right? And there are a couple of multiprocessing frameworks today, and the space is still, growing, right? The race to the top in the multiprocessing or parallelization, ML parallelization is still, ongoing. And there are a couple of options: Spark, Dask, Ray. And Fugue is a project which is kind of an abstraction layer over top of it, right? So Fugue is maintaining its position that, you as a user, shouldn't go down into technical underpinning of these frameworks. You should just be able to choose whether you want to use a Spark, Dask, or Ray. And Fugue is contributing to PyCaret in a way that in the next release, you will see a parameter in compare models. It would be called parallel. You can set it to true or false, and then you have an option to choose which framework you're using. So if you're using Databricks at work and you have a Spark cluster, that compare models function without writing any code, it's just a parameter that you will set to true. It will now train your models on a Spark cluster, right? You can switch between Spark, Dask, and Ray. But you can now, the thing is, you can now train like 25 models in a distributed environment, right? Which is kind of really cool because you don't have to additionally write any code or anything like that. And the fourth big thing is time series module. So right now we have this new fantastic time series module of PyCaret built by Nikhil, and I see Nikhil is here already. And right now, if you have to use that, you have to install it separately, PyCaret-ts-alpha. And the reason we had to do it this way is because the development of this version is based on or compatible with the latest version of scikit-learn, whereas the production copy of PyCaret is not, right? So we kind of had to make that choice. But this time series module would eventually be merged into the master branch before 3.0 release, which means that PyCaret.time_series module would be available in the main PyCaret. You don't have to install it separately. Hey, Nikhil, you want to unmute and say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
What's up, Nikhil?
Hey, I'm seeing some questions on the chat as well, so I'm trying to answer them as I go along.
Okay. So guys, those of you who don't know Nikhil is a part of, is a big part of core team, and Nikhil has is leading the development efforts for time series module. And PyCaret is not his first open source contribution. So he has contributed to a couple of open source projects, and he's very active in the community. So if you're ever stuck with anything related to time series, Nikhil is your guy. In fact, I also ask questions to Nikhil. All right. All right, so that brings me to the end of like the presentation. And you guys see my notebook now?
Yes, Mohit, go for it.
All right, so there are a few new functionalities in actually not few, a couple of them in 2.3.6, and my objective with this notebook is to kind of give you a quick showdown for that. So I'm going to be using this dataset insurance. It's a regression use case, and let me just check if I am on the right version. Okay, 2.3.6. So this is a regression use case. You have these 6 attributes of a patient, and you want to predict based on that what would be the medical bill for the patient, right? So I'm gonna initialize my setup. That's like very standard. And then okay, so I'm gonna, everything is okay here. I'm gonna press enter. By the way, this will also go away. This confirmation box that you see now, in 3.0, we are kind of removing that functionality. Right now, if you want to silent it, you can do it, like silent is equal to true, and it will not bother you. But instead of reinventing our own wheel of inferring data types, in 3.0, we are just going to rely on pandas data type. Whatever pandas detect for you, float, object, categorical, we are going to use that and go from there, right? Because we feel that this is like reinventing the wheel. Okay, so we'll get rid of this functionality. Okay. All right, so the first thing I do is, run the standard compare models. And compare models, if you don't know, compare models is a function that, does the hot surfacing. Okay, so we have like 2025 estimators in scikit-learn and other scikit-learn compatible libraries. We take them one by one and we run it through a cross-validation pipeline and generate these metrics, mean absolute error, mean square error. So pretty much like 5-6 common standard metrics. If you want, you can remove some of them or add your own, add some other metrics that are not included, or even write your own metric, right? So you have that control. There are functions that does that for you. I appreciate if you can check out the documentation for that. So this function does the horse racing. It basically trained 2025 models and have sorted it based on R square, which you can also like change and sort it from some other metric. In this case, it doesn't matter because for all the metrics, gradient boosting regressor did outperform everything. So if you see the variable best, right, stores a gradient boosting regressor, and if you see the type of it, it is a scikit-learn model, right? So if you want at this point, you can just use your gradient boosting regressor and do the scoring. Oops, not do the best. Do the scoring, and there's your prediction, and that's it, right? So at this point, if you want, you can just call it a day, take your model and go home, right? We are not going to do that. I'm going to talk about new functionalities that we added. So the first thing is based on this, best model, what you can do, there's a function called dashboard that we added in 2.3.6, which is basically built on top of which is built on top of Explainer dashboard, right? It's a very cool open source project, and we have kind of used that and integrated that with PyCaret so that if you just pass your best model into a dashboard command, it would run the Explainer dashboard and it would generate this link for you that would have a dashboard for you, right? So it would have a couple of tabs here. It's a really cool project. So you'd see you have your feature importance in first tab. You can see you want to see it based on sharp value or permutation importance. You have two methods for both of them. Smoker yes is the most important feature. That kind of makes sense in a healthcare environment. If you're smoking, your bill is expected to be higher because you'd have more problems, right? Then if you go to second tab, you have this typical residual plots. And one thing that I like most about this one is, this is regression, but you have the same thing with classification, typical AUC, PRs, confusion matrix, that kind of thing. But you see, this is, I call it waterfall chart. So this is one prediction. So I'm index number 728 of a test set, right? And this is like waterfall chart. So what this does is this says, okay, so the base prediction, is there a, yeah, there's a pop-out option. So the base prediction for anybody in the population is $13,225, right? And all these are the factors based on which you see increases and decreases, right? So if you work in finance, this is typically a waterfall chart used for variance explanation. That the base is this, all the factors in green increase my prediction, all the factors in red decrease my prediction, right? So in this case, the base for the population is 13,000. We ended up giving the $3,600 bill prediction for this particular patient, which is index ID 777, right? Or whatever it is. And you see the base is 13,000. There are a couple of factors that increase the prediction. So this guy's or girl's BMI is 40.2, which is high. So medical bill increased by $1,100. Region is Northeast, and Northeast is an expensive region. So prediction increased by $566, so on and so forth. And then eventually, because this guy smoker yes is equal to 0, this guy was not smoking, guy or girl, the prediction goes down by $5,800, right? So if you do the maths, all this maths, right, add and minus, this $13,000 is going to come to $3,600, right? This is really, really useful if you are kind of analyzing. And on the right hand side, if you see, you would see a partial dependency plot for smoker yes, right? Again, for a one specific ID, this tells you that this gray line is the base effect of any smoker in the population, and this blue line is the effect of this particular patient, right? So again, very important, very, very useful thing for analysis. You have what if analysis, so you can play with these numbers and see the effect of changes on prediction. So you want to see if the patient, instead of 30 years, if the patient is 40 years, is it going to change anything, right? You can do that sort of thing here. So very, very cool project. Okay, so this is one, a very quick and easy functionality. It does scale, it does scale to a good extent. But if you're dealing with like a 10 million raws data set, then this is gonna take some time, right? But there are a lot of settings that you can control. So if you want to make it fast, you can pass the dashboard quags and get rid of sharp or some of the other plots that takes a lot from. There's a question on chat. Can we implement it inline? Yeah. So there's a parameter, I think, here, display format dash. I think you can set it to inline. Yeah. So if you say display format is equal to inline, and if this works correctly, I hope dashboard would be displayed here in the notebook. Yeah, there you go. Right. So you have the dashboard in the notebook. Again, I would say that, if you're dealing with a really big data set, this would not be a good idea to do it in line because it would make your notebook very, very slow, right? All right. Okay. So this was dashboard, right? There's another function that we added called EDA. And what EDA does, and let me just, generate another notebook here. PyCaret new. So up until now, like there was no functionality for EDA in PyCaret. There are a lot of automated frameworks, and the reason like I didn't integrated any before this is I didn't find any straightforward framework. Like this one that we have integrated is the one that I would use at work. I would want my team to use at work because it saves a lot of time, right? So I'll just quickly show you what this is. Let's just import, let's say juice. Oops. And you can run this function two ways. You can run it before setup and after setup. I'm going to show you how do you do it before setup. So you would import EDA, and then EDA, you pass your data and you also pass your target, right? Just like you do for setup. And if you run this function after setup, you don't need to pass this because we can take it from the global variable, right? So this is again a very good framework based on a library called AutoWiz, built by Ram. Again, he's a very active open source contributor. And this would kind of give you all the kind of things that, that are common that you can check, right? I mean, this will address 85% of your requirements. This will never satisfy, 100%. But I would take a 85% for one line of code, right? Okay, and again, in this one, you have two ways. You can export it as a HTML. And there's another way here that you can generate static graphics. So this is all, interactive, but you can also, there's a format here, display format that you can set to SVG. And it would basically give you typical, matplotlib Seaborn style plots, right? All right. Okay, for this to work, you have to do matplotlib inline. Otherwise, you will not see the plots. Okay, so this is EDA, but this is like, typical. This is not interactive. Okay. And it is still generative.
Moed, just a very quick question. This EDA function, in which module is currently active? It's just classification and regression, I believe.
Yeah, classification and regression. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so a lot of plots. Okay. So I'm going to stop this function. All right, I'm going to move to the first notebook. So we have seen dashboard, we have seen EDA. The other thing we have integrated is, let's just create, a simple logistic regression or linear regression model. Create LR. This is linear regression. So you see, when you are deploying this model, right? Imagine you don't have, a lot of complicated pipeline stuff. You're not doing a lot with in terms of your data processing, and you have relatively a straightforward use case. You have this linear regression model, which is scikit-learn linear regression. And if you want to deploy this and you have availability of Python runtime in your inference environment, then most likely what you would do is you would create an API out of it and deploy it as a web API, right? This is a very common way. But think about this. If your downstream applications are in a different language, right? It could be you are running something really simple on PowerShell and you want to generate predictions, right? And you don't have Python available, okay? For whatever reason. What do? Well, you can transpile your model. Transpile means you take this model, open this up, and write the inference script in a different language, right? So for that, we have added a function called convert model, okay? It takes model and the language you want to convert it into the inference script, not basically the decision function of the model, right? So you have all these languages here. So we'll pass our model and we'll say, give me the equivalent, give me the inference script in PHP, right? And let me just add a print statement so that it's easy to read. So this is you copy this code, this script, and you see the coefficients here are hard coded, right? So you don't need a model, you don't need a Python, you just choose the language and you can use this as a inference script. Okay, this is transpilation. Now For linear regression, it is very simple because, you know, there's a weight times feature, right? There's a constant, and then there's coefficient weights for each feature. That's why you see this is addition, addition. But if you do something like decision tree, I would expect there would be a lot of if analysis statements in any language, right? So let's just see that dt, and then we would convert our decision tree into Java, right? So you see now you have this pretty big script of if and else. Would you do that? Well, you can have a use case where you don't have availability of Python, or maybe you wanna, you know, deploy it on Edge or in PHP or whatever, right? Should you do it? I don't know. I mean, it depends on the use case, right? But the functionality is there in case you need it. This doesn't work with 100% of the models. For example, it will not work with gradient boosting regression. The implementation is not yet there, right? At some point, it would be there, but not today, right? But it would work with like 95% of the models, right? Certainly all the, you know, common ones like linear logistic regression, decision trees, light GBMs, it will work with that. I don't know if it would work with XGBoost, but we can try. So if I create XGBoost here and try to convert XGBoost into, let's say, PowerShell. Oh, so XGBoost in PowerShell. It would be a very big script, very big script, but it is what it is. Okay. All right. So that was convert model. So
sorry to interrupt. We have a question here that I think is important, is interesting. Somebody is asking if this converted model can be used or deployed in another hardware.
Yeah. Because now this is not linked to, you know, this is not, I mean, you're not taking your Python object and porting it in a different language. You're just extracting a decision function out of it. And if you can run this script on any kind of hardware, if it works, that's great, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, what it's producing is just a script. It's not just the object itself.
Yeah, that's why you see all these numbers are like hard-coded. You see these are the weights, or in case of decision tree, these would be Gini indexes or something like that, right? It's a decision function. Okay. Remember when I said about deployment, I said there are two ways. You can either transpile your model. This is very uncommon, right? Yes, Carlos, this is exported to other device. I think the right term is this transpile. So transpiler is when you take your native code and produce the equivalent code in another language, right? That's transpilation. So this is not very common. Okay, I use this for a very simple model on my WordPress website where, you know, I didn't want to go through the hassle of Python and server and blah blah blah. Every WordPress comes by default with vanilla PHP. So I use something very simple on my website where I have a model that I just trained on my laptop in like 5 minutes, and then I've transpiled it into PHP and I use it on WordPress. Okay. So this is not a very common way. The more common way is you create a web API out of your model, right? And, you know, to create a web API, there are a couple of frameworks. You know, Flask is a very famous one. And these days, you know, Fast API is a very very famous top of the choice framework for APIs, right? So what you can do, we have added a function called create_API. All right, and let's see, we have linear regression. What this function does is create API. It takes a model and the name of the API, right? And name of the API, I would say insurance_API. Okay, I will run this and it would do this. It would say API successfully created. This function only creates a post API. It doesn't run, right? So it's created API. The API is not active yet. You have to run it through like this command here, Python script. You can run it in the notebook or through the command line, but I want to show you what happened. When you run this function, it actually writes a Python script for you behind the scene, right? And if I go and show you in my folder, you would see that PyCaret Meetup, there's a file created for you, insurance_API, right? I'm too lazy to show this file to you in VS Code, but there is actually a trick in Jupyter. You can actually load any file like this, and you can actually see the content of the file, right? With this magic command. So you see, if I load this insurance API.py, you would see this is the script that you would write yourself if you want to create a fast API, right? Or create a web API out of it. To run this, you can either run this command, copy paste here, or you can actually, normally you would go to, command line and go to the folder and run, what's the name here? Python. So let's run this command. Let's copy this command and let's just run this, right? If you run this Python script, it will spin off API locally. Okay, in few, yeah, there you go, 187.0.0.1.8,000, and if you go to that API, you would see that API is posted for you, right? You want to try it, try it out. Let's put age is 25, sex is male, BMI is 10, children is 0, smoker yes, Northwest. Execute and success, and there's your prediction, 20,846, right? So normally, you would, go through a model training selection process, do your horse racing, select one model, then do the hyperparameter tuning, on sampling, whatever you want. And then at the end, you would create an API out of it. Normally, when you create API, you also want to create a Docker image of that. Docker image, think it like a container, right? And that is also, not something that you can do in your notebook, right? What you have to do is, use some kind of ID and create an image and wrap your code inside that image, create a container out of it, and then host it on cloud, right? There's another function called create_docker. What this function does, it takes API from you. Okay, so API name. So this is our API name. And if you want, you can pass few parameters here. So you want to use which image, what port, etc., etc. And in this case, by default, we are using 3.8 Slim. But when you run this function, again, you would see writing requirements, writing Docker file to build image. You have to, again, so this will only, build a file for you. It will not run, it will not make a container for you, right? So if you go to the folder, you would see there are two files written for you. I will just show you here with this load trick of Jupyter. This is the requirements file where you need fast PyCaret, right? In 3.0, we would get rid of PyCaret. You shouldn't need PyCaret at the inference time. You'd only need fast API. Fast API is the framework through which we created this. So you need fast API, definitely. And UVCon is the web server, right? So you would need these two. And if you see the actual Docker file, which is this file here, right? This is a pretty standard thing, right? I mean, even if you have to do it yourself, I don't see how this is gonna do anything better, right? Because this is a pretty standard stuff that you would write. Yeah, this is a pretty standard stuff that you would write, and I don't see how anybody would add value to this process. Again, as I said, 80% of the time, these things will fit the bill. There would be situations, scenarios where no automation can help. You have to go down and build things from ground up, right? But I would take that 80% number is big enough. Okay, so here we have this Docker file and requirements created for us based on whatever we have done, right? Everything is dynamic. And now if you want to build this Docker image, you have to run this code here. Let's say my Docker image and v1, and all you need to do is basically in the same folder that we would run this. If I run this code here for you, it would start, if everything is okay here. Yeah, so it has started building this UC Docker container for you, right? And it would take 18-20 minutes, but it would finish up and it would build the image for you. I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to show you. So you see this insurance image I just built like 37 minutes ago. It takes like 15-20 minutes. At the moment, the size of the file is 1.5 gig. The base image itself also is kind of heavy, but yeah, we are figuring out a way to make it as light as possible. Like we really don't want 1.5K, right? So if anybody here can look into this and want to contribute to this cause, then you're more than welcome. Okay. Uh, Nikhil is asking, if I create multiple models for many similar data set, will the Docker image contain the models for all the data sets? Well, if you build an API that way, then yeah, your Docker can have multiple models. So even though if you have a lot of .pickle files in your folder, it would dockerize all of them, but your API doesn't know which model to load, right? And right now with this PyCaret's create API, it takes one model at a time. So something can be done around those lines where you want to create a Docker image and switch between different models, right? I don't know if there's a use case like that. Yeah, we can add that. Okay, so this is create API, create Docker. There's another functionality which is also I like to put it under MLOps category. Is basically sometimes what you want to do is quick and dirty, a very simple front end application, right? Right now there's a function called create app. It just takes your model, just pass your model, right? And right now it just gives you by default a Gradio application, very simple application, right? You can host it, like you can see it in the browser or inline as well. So this is a browser version. You put your age, whatever. All of this is dynamic, right? The selection boxes and everything based on data types, and you generate your prediction, right? You can host this application, very simple, nothing fancy. But this is right now only for Gradio. But as you would expect, based on what we are doing in PyCaret, very soon you would see there's a parameter in this function, and you can switch between Gradio and Streamlit, right? Because for us it is no different, and we don't want to be in a position of forcing opinions. We want to give you the option to select whatever you want, right? There is a Vignesh is asking, is there a logging functionality if you're like thinking about like ML flow kind of logging? Yeah, it's not new for 2.3.6. It's been there for quite some time. So what you can do is you can log your experiments by passing log_experiment is equal to true in your setup function. Styling can be done with Gradio. I don't think so. Gradio supports a lot of styling, but if you want to, there's a parameter here called appquarks which takes a dictionary. As long as Gradio library takes that parameter for styling, you can pass it in appquarks dictionary. Okay, Brandon. All right. So that was created. Okay. Let me see. We have talked about dashboard, EDA, check fairness. I'm gonna come on and convert model, create API, create Docker, create. Okay. So the last function I wanna talk about is around the fairness. Okay. So we have added this function called check fairness, right? If you see our data set, we have the sex and the region, right? And normally, at work when you're building models, what mostly people are interested in doing this. You want to do this, okay? You want to build a model and test it on your holdout set and see if the selection rate and error rate of your model is different by, let's say if you have 10 industries to work with, is it different by each industry, right? Now, if you think about industry or department, you don't think a lot about biasness, but instead of department industry, if the feature is like gender, male or female, or, race or something like that, then that kind of error analysis becomes check of biasness, right? Because what you want to see is if you have a loan approval model, is it affecting differently? Is the selection rate different for gender is equal to male, gender is equal to female, right? That's where the biasness comes in, right? So there's a social impact or ethical impact to that. But in my view, I look at like a error analysis, right? To use this function, you call check_fairness, right? And you would pass your model, linear regression, and you would pass based on what you want to see. So here we would basically just, let's look at the basis of sex, okay? and you would get a table and the graph, right? If you look at the table, so this is basically showing you on your test set, test holdout set, sex female, sex male, how many samples are in the female category. So 196, 206 in male. So pretty much balanced, right? Roughly. And mean absolute error when the gender is female is 3914. When the gender is male is 4500. Same goes for all the other metrics, right? So if you have a custom metric, like for example, you're doing a churn and you have a metric called profit, that would be here as well, right? And the graphs here are basically just the visual representation of that. What you can do really cool thing here is you can combine the features, right? So you see, I'm just checking sex. Maybe I want to do sex and smoker, right? And now you see you would have a multi-index data frame, right? And so is your graph, right? So now you can see female not smoking error rate is $2,900. Male not smoking error rate is $3,000, more or less than, right? You don't have to stop here. You can just keep going, and let's just also add a region here as well, right? So when you are female not smoking, $3,000 error rate in Northeast, and when you are male not smoking, $2,600 error rate, right? And if you're doing classification, you would also see selection rates and stuff like that, right? Okay, so this is a pretty cool functionality in my view. It uses the fairness approach by Microsoft. So if you read the documentation, there are many different approaches of conceptualizing fairness in machine learning. This function is based on one particular implementation called group fairness. And group fairness basically looks at which groups of individual or which subpopulation of individual are at risk for experiencing harms, right? But as I said, I use this like an error analysis tool, right? Because, yeah. All right.
Very nice for drilling down into the details. Moez, what about the drift report on predict model?
Yeah. So the last thing, thanks for reminding. Last thing is there is a new functionality which is basically, you can have drift in your models, right? You can have concept drifts and data drifts. We'll not go into the technicalities of that, but we have added this new parameter here. So normally you would use predict model like this, right? You would if you don't pass any data, this is your holdout set, and these are metrics on your holdout set, and there is a parameter here called drift report. And if you set it to true, if you set it to true, right, it would generate a HTML drift report for you. In this case, I'm getting some bug because it's kind of not very stable, but I can show you what it would look like, right? Yeah, so this is what it will look like. It will give you your reference distribution, which is your training data set, and your current distribution. It will tell you it has detected the drift or not. In this case, on CRIM column, it has detected the drift. The training range was this green line, and you have all these data points that were not there at the time of training. Right now, this parameter in PyCaret, use drift underscore report is equal to true, only compares like if your holdout set has drifted from train, right? This is not what you want to do in real life. What you want to do in real life is when I pass you the new unseen data, you want to compare that with your training set, right? Which is something that we are working on. So this functionality was added like in an experimental mode, even though, I don't know why it is not working right now because of data frame, or I need some kind of update. This is a new environment. But even though if this would work here, it's not very useful because you're not checking the drift of new unseen data with the reference data, right? You're checking the same, you are just checking the drift of holdout set with the training set that you actually created yourself when you run the setup, right? So you're checking if there's 402 observations are drifting from 936. In theory, if the split is fair, it shouldn't drift, right? If you have big, so this one, I would not take it seriously because 1300 raws, you can, a small data set, you will always see drift. All your features will drift, okay? But if you are dealing with like 500,000 records, right, and you start to see drift on your test set, then you should go back and see what's going on, right? If the split is fair, you should not have a drift. With the small data sets, don't take it seriously. 1200, 500, 5000, 10,000, there's possibility of drift, right? Even if one customer who spends like $1 million for some reason gets into your test set, oh, there is a big drift there, right? Because your training set now involves 99 percentile of customers who spend up until like $10,000, but then you have one customer spending $1 million that unfortunately goes to test it. Now your drift report will say drift, 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 right? So yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think we have covered everything. One thing I would say, guys, is the hardest thing that I did, or the most, the time that I put in recently is the documentation. This is extremely straightforward. This is complete rewrite from scratch. And this is gonna, if you're interested in learning PyCaret, this is gonna change your life, right? It is so straightforward and easy. Okay, so please please check this out and give us your feedback. And last thing I'm gonna say is, we have reached to a point where we have a very big front-end community, and we are very happy about that. But unfortunately, with the speed PyCaret is growing, we are going in a direction where we would run out of, we would have very hard future if we don't get contributors. So if you are using PyCaret, you are getting benefit from it, please do contribute. Please do come back, do contribute in form of documentation, code base, etc., etc. We also know what are the issues that is stopping, that is not creating that excitement in developers. Our backend needs a lot of work, and internally we are committed to improve that. After 3.0 release, we are going to freeze our code base for a couple of months, and we would just revamp the backend, because the next big thing that I am looking to is building a community of developers. Otherwise, this project or any other open source project will die, right? It's only a matter of time. Nobody will support it. So if you use PyCaret, you get benefit from this. Please do come back and contribute to the project. There is no way we would be able to sustain it on our own time. Right now, there are 8 or 10 people who are, giving time for free in the spirit of open source. But, at one day, everybody would move on in their life, right? So I am under a lot of pressure in finding a sustainable way of people coming and contribute to the code base. All right. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Moez. Just as a final note, we saw maybe on the community, Slack has been very active over the last couple of weeks or so with some errors, especially because some of the updates on Explainer AI and everything. So I just want to give a message to the community, if you feel free to join us and chime in. When you find an error or something, when you're working with PyCaret, be aware that there are so many dependencies on third-party packages inserted and built into the PyCaret full package, and those updates sometimes create some kind of friction within the PyCaret. So it's not that PyCaret is not working well; it's just we are dependent on so many other packages that are being updated on their own way. So, because we saw some messages around explaining AI and so forth, but this is just not related to PyCaret itself. It's just more on the side of the other packages being updated. That's all. Okay. And just that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us here in this session. We will be posting this recording into our materials and website. Join us on Meetup, where we are going to be scheduling more sessions like this and some others. If any of you has any business case that want to showcase with us and share with the community what you have done, what you have solved using PyCaret, let us know. We'll be more than happy to give you a space, a voice on how you have been using PyCaret. Don't be afraid. You don't need to be a super expert in programming or coding or anything. As long as you're able to use PyCaret to solve any business issue, any business problem, you're more than welcome to join us, because you can maybe inspire other people to do the same, or even maybe other things. So don't be afraid to contribute, to share with us, and to join us in the community. So the more that we contribute, the more that we can generate, and of course, the more that we can become productive in our lives and in our professions. Okay, I think that's everything for now.
Hey, great job, team. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all
Thank
the
you.
work, fellas. This is great.
Thank you, Milan. Okay, very good. Moez, any final word from your side?
Nothing. Thank you everyone for joining. Enjoy your weekend and stay warm if you live in Canada.
Very good, my friend. Okay, thank you, everybody. So we're going to end up the session. And as we said, we are going to be sharing the recording into our websites and channels. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you.